The focus of tonight, or the chat of tonight, is about life after awakening, which can greatly mirror life before awakening in really profound ways. Part of tonight is to kind of crack apart some of the projections and some of the myths and some of the ideas about what that looks like, or what that will be when you get there, or all the ways that our psyches make our current experience not quite satisfying because we have this projected story about where we're going and what it's going to look like when we get there. So Ben and I are going to trash that story apart a little bit. I am anyways. Maybe he's going to uplift it and inspire it. He's going to refuel it. So I'm gonna start. I'm just gonna actually tell you a little bit about what for me, my experience of awakening is very extraordinary. So I come from the camp of the sudden bolts of lightning, wild, mystical, crazy, massive experience, very clear before I woke up, after I woke up, like to the moment. So that is, I think that's a lot of what stories talk about, but it's actually incredibly rare that it looks like that. But mine did. So sometimes I refer to as before I died and then after I died, because that's a lot of what it felt like. So before I died, I had no spiritual inclinations and no spiritual life. So I was really focused on, I was actually an artist. So I lived as an artist. I worked as an actor and as a dancer. And I was very focused on the creative process. So I suspect I used a lot of stillness when I was creating the work that I did. And I had kind of a high-level career. I did a lot of international directing and touring and performing. So I was in the position to spend a lot of time creating in the studio and directing other people. So for sure I was using stillness, because I distinctly remember in my creative life, I would get as far as I could get with my dancers in the studio, and then I'd stop. And I'd go to bed. And sometimes it would be a week or so before I'd get back in the studio knowing what to do next. So definitely I was engaging my creative process with stillness, but I wouldn't have known that, and I didn't know that language. And I'd certainly, the people I came from and the community I came from, like we didn't know about the Buddha. We didn't talk about the Buddha. And I think probably there was like references maybe, because culture kind of references it. But where I'm from, it's not like Northern California, where it's regularly referenced. So, and I come from a very cold Canadian climate, where people are tough and people are sturdy, and there's not all that namby-pamby spiritual kind of stuff that goes on. Because you got to cut a lot of wood to stay warm all winter, and you got to go hunting to, so it's a different kind of a culture that I come from. So I didn't have this drive or this movement at all. I didn't know who Eckhart Tolle was. Nothing. So I had this incredibly bizarre and traumatic and crazy experience of literally going out for lunch with my mother and my aunt and coming home to change my shoes to meet a friend for a date. And as I was changing my shoes, it's funny because it's how it worked, but it's funny to me now, that there was a voice that was like, it's time. It was like this movement of like warning me, and then crack. And what it felt like to me at the time is that my brain blew a fuse, and I no longer had a mind. It just popped. And prior to that moment, I couldn't have told you. I thought everything was mind. I wouldn't have known there was something on the other side of mind. So, but it just blew a fuse. And so what happened was, as I was putting my shoes on, it just everything dissolved into this vast stillness, including myself. And the shoes just, ironically, it was really funny. They kind of turned into this kind of gold light, but then it just was like stillness, kind of holding like code. It became very Matrix for a moment. But it was kind of like, it was just like stillness making an agreement to take a shape that I would call shoe. Or that there would be an agreement of space called myself. And I remember putting the shoe up and thinking, gosh, you know, this body is beautiful. Wow. It was just this like light and stillness moving and taking the shape, and it was just so beautiful. And I looked up to the wall in the room I was in, and it was the same thing. It was just this vast field of stillness. And I could see, though, it was like coded in a way that this would be wall, except the thing that turned it into an actual wall blew. I blew a fuse. And so I sometimes use the analogy, or when I'm speaking about it, I feel like, did you guys ever, like, you would make a little stick figure at the bottom of a book and you drew many of them, and if you ran your finger across that, you'd see the little stick figure run? Did you ever do that, like on a little comic strip or something? That's what the mind is. It's the thing that reads the code and turns it into body, wall, you know, and humans and guitar, like all the things. And that blew out. And I didn't have any filter to turn it into it, but I could perceive that that was supposed to be a wall and this was supposed to be a body. But I had no language for it at all. And ironically, I had been watching with my roommate The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. We didn't really have TV in our little, you know, my little artist apartment with my roommate, you know. But we would a friend would videotape, remember back in those days, you would videotape something, these shows. And there was a skit on The Daily Show about rapturing. And if you raptured, like, was there some kind of rapture insurance you could buy that would, like, leave notes on people's emails or something saying, you know, like, Karen is no longer here, she is raptured. And this was the skit. So that was the language that I had for what was going on, was that I raptured. It was like, oh my God, I've raptured. But what it actually felt like in my body was that I died. I felt like, oh, I died. Except I'm here. And I don't know, like, how to go, like, what happens here. But I didn't have the facility to, like, it took me a very long time for form to come back or to find form. So especially for those first few days, it was just this vastness, and anytime I actually focused on something, it would just dissolve into the code and into the vastness. But there was this historical remembering of this woman here who had a job and had a life, and even at the really basic level, like, had a body. And I'm pretty sure bodies need things like food and drink and washing and things like that, but I have no access to that. Like, I couldn't feel hunger or thirst, or it was just vastness. And I actually was able, about 3 or 4 days later, I was able to bring form enough back that I could actually begin to, like, find the body and find ways to remember this woman who was apparently still here, but definitely not the same. Definitely not the same. And I wrote in my journal just this, like, simple sentence that just said, I've died. And it felt like a suicide. Like, it wasn't like it was like, I killed myself. And so I committed suicide, but it's a strange death, because it's a death into bliss. I've just died into bliss. And because the actual felt sense of all this vast spaciousness was love. And I was watching this massive vastness had movement to it. And that movement was what I knew as love. And this wild amount of love, way more than as a human I was able to access, was available. And it was bliss. It was blissful. But not blissful that I could rest. Because I sometimes think a lot of times when I hear a story projected about awakening or lining up, it's like, and then it happens, and I finally rest as bliss. And everything's okay now. And for me, it was like there was a field of bliss, and I was bliss. But it was really traumatic at the same time. And it was really, really scary and challenging, and I didn't know how to maneuver here. And and I would say to my roommate just these bizarre words about raptured. I'm raptured. I can't find my body. I don't know what to do. And after about 3 or 4 days, and I was like massively in love with this big tree outside of our front porch, which of course I didn't see as a tree. It was just vastness taking this particular code that was so rich, and I was mad. I would just sit on the porch and watch this tree and be in love with this tree. But I had to go to work, and I had to like pay my bills, and I had to pay rent and feed myself, and it was just this incredibly very extraordinary, very wild, bizarre experience. And eventually it was months and months and months before I could actually start to assemble form. It was like 10% of my mind came back, enough to put form together, and form could happen. And it was almost years later before I could actually re-put the life of this woman back there and function inside of her life. It was 5 or 6 years later, because vastness is like a really shitty driver. It's like really crazy, to like no rules. It was a couple of years before I drove for sure, and then I freaked everybody out when I would drive because I can actually read the code for a very long time. So I can go as fast as I want because I can feel movement, And so it's a really scary reality. My mother will not get in the car with me ever because of this wildness. So I was very fortunate, because silence takes care of itself, that I eventually got some support, and some folks were able to kind of say, this is called enlightenment, and this is awakening, and it happens. It happens to people, and it kind of looks like this, and that kind of began to orient it for me a little bit, and kind of gave me some support through it. And there's this funny story. It's actually the first time I came to like a teacher in a room full of people who wanted to know about this thing. And it was maybe 3 or 4 months into this process, after it had been pointed out to me what exactly was going on for me, and that there was this visiting teacher whom we all here know as Ajashanti, and he was in Vancouver doing a weekend retreat. I managed to go there, and I was very, very afraid to go. I was really afraid of what I would find. I don't know why, but anyways, I got there, and there was like 300 people, and Aja so incredibly clearly articulating, like walking people right to the threshold of what I was living, like pulling out the rug from under them. Many of you maybe know this experience, having sat with him, and literally exploding people's minds. And I walked in, and it's funny, I actually don't really remember the conversation. It's him that remembers it. He likes to tell it back to me a lot. But I remember the feeling inside my body, which was like aghast, horrified, that he was walking people to their death without people knowing it was death. Like they were gonna die, like not imagistically, like for real. Like it's all gone. And I wanted to pick up stones and throw them at him to get him to shut up. And I ended up going up to him, I think I just ran up to the microphone and just started like berating him and yelling at him and screaming at him to be quiet, please be quiet. Don't tell everybody because they'll die. And it was many, many years before I thought that this was a good thing for people. I spent many years trying to be the Antichrist in a way. It's like the anti-Buddha. It's like, just be happy, just have a good life, just do nice things to each other, but don't do this. This is horrifying. And it was actually God, it was probably 6 years later when I was with Aja doing something, and he just looked at me and he said, "Would you take it back? Like, do you wish it was different?" And I was like, "No." And he said, "If you had one thing to give anybody, what would you give it to them?" And I thought, as trying and as terrifying as it is, because in fact for many, many years it was the apparatus here, the totally no mind whatsoever, created such a vastness, such an alignment with such a vastness that, I could literally feel bees landing on plants like miles away, Or I'll say to Ben, I can actually feel like 700,000 miles away a person in a room, and I can actually feel like the amount of moisture in the room and their whole internal feelings and the people beside them, and it's like, like it was a long time to navigate how to function with this much information here. And it was crazy, really, really, really crazy, and it was really crazy for a lot of years. But when Aja asked me that question about, is there anything you would give, like, would you give this to someone? If you could give somebody something, could you give this? And what I was aware of is, as incredibly challenging as my walk had been, the background of my life is bliss, is stillness. And before I died, the background was a neurotic, painful, many, many stories colliding amongst themselves, creating such a deep rift and split inside of me as a background. And the recognition of the shift of peace as the background, it was the first time I realized, oh my God, there's nothing I want to give someone than this. And it was still a number of years later, so just even very recently, that it became, because beautiful friends in my life like Ben and Aja and many people had continually asked me to teach, because my experience is from being very, very wide, trying to find form, trying to embody, trying to bring this vastness into life, into ordinary life, everyday life, because I'm wildly in love with it. I'm madly in love with paying bills, and putting your winter clothes on and putting your summer clothes away, or all the things, buying hamburgers and
you can pay mine.
Running out of gas, and just life, just from the vastness into life, where I think the majority of the journey is the other way. It's trying to bring life into its vastness, and mine is the opposite. So it was only about six months ago or so that it was really, really clear that this light knows this light, and this light, and this light, and this light, and wants to illuminate with each other. That we're not, there's no hierarchy, there is no separation in vastness, like we're all it. And this wants to know itself and illuminate itself. And that's what it's doing. So that's what I'm doing. The next level of form I'm going to embody now. So that's my kind of the extraordinary pathway into waking up. And Ben, do you want to share your pathway?
I have a question. Have you written a book or written about it?
I haven't. I do have a blog. Some of you have read my blog, where I kind of talk about a little bit of how I see, because I do tend to primarily see at the quantum field. It sometimes takes me a moment for it to come into form. So I'm a really great person to ask, questions about the universe and shit like that. I run a business, and I have a business partner, and she's really great at the practical aspects of our business. And she always checks to me as like what's going on the quantum level? like what's law of attraction? What is it? And I could be like, in this moment, this is like, I could just read code and bring it to her. So I talk a little bit in my blog about the way it looks for me. And those people, there's lots of people here who are in my life all the time. And they kind of know this little gap place I find often of trying to be embodying form.
Did you ever have the experience of
let's just say somebody is, interacting with something and they're maybe not being very gentle with it. And I don't know if it's because there's unfelt emotion, but like my mom will walk above me in the room upstairs and she walks, she's a really sturdy woman, and it's like I can't be underneath the ceiling and I have to like go all the way to the opposite side of the house because I can't take the movement up above me
because your experience is that it's so loud.
What it does is it kind of there's that, and then like there was a brief 2 weeks where like I felt it in my forehead, like the dog would bark and I would just be like, like I could feel you inside of my brain, like what is that, and there's just extreme sensitivity to the environment. Like when you were saying that you could feel somebody across the way, like I think I'm afraid of being present because I'm like so sensitive to everything, but I don't know if that's just like a phase or like what that's all about.
Yeah, I think the reality is for all of us, the deeper we spend time saturating in our stillness, and as our awareness in the teachings that we come to and the pointers that drop us into our stillness, the more we wake up, the more we open up. And when we open up and we wake up, we become more alive. We're more here, we're more receptive. And this looks like in our world sensitivity. And it's actually, we're so much more receptive to what's here for us. And definitely, in my own journey, there was definitely wanting and remembering what it was like to filter that out or to have a block for that and having it gone and being overwhelmed. There was a resistance. There was this kind of resistance to it for many years. And eventually we're all of us have our own journey, and our own journeys are like wildly appropriate to each other, to ourselves. And what happens is eventually your own life experience, like your mother's walking and the dog barking, begins to wear that resistance down. And as it wears the resistance down, it's true, it just moves through. So it's mom walk. So I don't know exactly how your journey is going to unfold, and you'll tell me, and it'll be essential. It'll be really, really important. But for me, eventually the resistance wore down. Many years though, like I'm a willful lady, so many years, that resistance wore itself out, and now it just moves through. Every now and then I'll catch on it and try to figure it out or prevent it, but when I've surrendered to it, it's really quite beautiful. Sometimes I've said to Ben, sometimes it feels like Grand Central Station here all the fucking time. There's so much going on, but I can resist against it. But in the times that I'm surrendered, and these days it's much more. There's much less resistance. It moves through beautifully. It has a yummy flavor to it. It's still bliss, still silence, just taking a momentary shape of mom's boobs. But I've never lost track of its source, and it's just more yumminess touching me. So, but yours journey, I don't know how long it's going to take. It'll take its time. Lots of time. It's really thorough.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You talked about when you got in touch with sort of the oneness of everything, the matrix, as you were calling it.
Yeah.
Then you
You've
talked
seen
about
Matrix.
how you wanted to go back to, I guess, not seeing the matrix, and wanted to pay bills because you love paying bills. Why did you feel you need to come back? Because wouldn't you love wherever you were at the moment? Why did you need to come back to one particular form?
That's the really beautiful question. That is such a beautiful question. In those first days, there was definitely an awareness that it didn't matter what shape this vastness wanted to take. It would never leave its source, which was just heaven, beyond heaven, more than heaven. Heaven is still a concept or still a word, but this incredibly deep fulfillment. It would never leave it, so it could take any form. It was very clear in those first days. But it was actually, there was so little me there in those, especially in that first year even. So very little me to have a will anyway, except to resist or want something back. But the stillness itself wanted this woman, wanted this shape, wanted this history, this trauma even, this voice. It was like the stillness itself was so madly in love with this. And it was almost like it wanted it too, and then there was enough kind of this little tiny like piece of will that was resistant, wanted it back, wanted this woman in her old life. Because fucking hell, like that woman was on a trajectory, you know, she was about to buy a house and she was getting a big promotion and she was a big deal in the world of the artistry, and she was like going and it felt like game off. That's really what I felt like for that first year, like fuck, back on the curb again. Christ, what's it gonna take for me to get my business back? If I can get that house. So that little tiny piece rode the bigger impulse, which was life itself, very madly in love. Obviously madly in love with this one because, you know, 8 years later it's still this shape. It's funny, it was like hard to embody this history and this voice and this story and this conditioning. Many times that little me later in the journey wanted to be like, but not with this conditioning, but not with that awful, you know, repetitive fucking pattern, like just switch that, you know. But it wasn't. It comes back for it all, they say, and it's a great language for it, but it's more like your perfection is so clear outside of the mind, and everything that you are and every shape that you are is like the most incredibly beautiful masterpiece. And you feel in yourself really not a masterpiece, or really challenged, or eventually you'll overcome, but it's actually this moment, exactly as you are, like every hair on your body, every internal challenge, every emotional dickheadedness, whatever, you know, the times that we're total douchebags, like existence is madly in love with it, like wildly, passionately, and wants nothing more than that.
Ben, what's your relationship to Ben?
To?
What's your relationship to Ben? Or the son?
To this one.
Yeah.
What's my relationship to this one?
Yeah. She was just talking about her relationship. How do you conceptualize it or not conceptualize it?
I don't know, man. Just here?
Do you think in terms of a me and you? Do you think in terms of code? Do you think, how do you see things?
However I want to. Whatever I tell I'm experiencing, that's what I'm experiencing. If I don't tell myself anything, I don't experience anything. If I am just enjoying whatever is in the particular way that it shows up, there is whatever seems to be the most appropriate story for that, whatever seems to be the most natural sort of projection, that's what's happening. And so that's what I experience in any moment, just whatever the projection is for that time, whatever is appropriate for that moment, that's what's experienced. Does that make sense?
Projection from what?
So, for example, as she started speaking about code, like I could experience that. As she spoke about stillness, I could experience that. As she spoke about wildly passionate, I could experience that. As she spoke about paying bills, I could experience that. So it's like, in a sense, you could say there is nothing there unless we are there, unless there is consciousness to actively, automatically, but actively be there in a particular shape, way, or form.
So you're you're both using a little different context
Sure.
to explain it, and I'm trying to hear where the connecting places are.
Why? Don't do that. Impossible.
Well, it might
Take-
be possible, but so when you said whatever you project, is it like it's coming into form, as Karen is saying, whatever is wanting to express through that form?
Mhm.
Say more.
Okay. Lately, it is just really, okay, so if I would have to describe my relationship on an everyday basis to life as a being, it would be that I take the shape of wherever I am. And I don't necessarily mean that metaphysically, but on a more individual level, or seemingly individual, it means that my system, my being, becomes a reflection of whatever is going on collectively. So my particular, like she loves to pay bills, that seems to be her. So I think we can do some exchanging afterwards. But so that's the way it sort of comes into form for her through the bills, for example. Of course, there's much more. But so what would be, that would maybe her blueprint, so to speak, as an individual expression of consciousness. Why she was created in the first place. Because if you exist, there must be a reason for you to exist in the particular way that you exist. And so for her, that is paying bills. That's her destiny.
How she is coming around.
Very weird.
So what is my love? What is my natural sort of love? What is my relationship to life in this form, in this expression? It would be to be a mirror of collective consciousness. So whatever is going on and whatever is needed in that environment, I'll intuit that and I'll be the best mirror I can be for that expression. So in that sense, my body doesn't really have an individual property to it. Sure, I have my sort of preferences, and I like this over that, and I enjoy hanging out with friends, and I enjoy doing fun stuff like that. But on a sort of deeper level, more consistent drive, what my drive is, my natural sort of showing up in life, would be to be a reflection of other people. To mirror back to you whatever you want to hear. Whatever you may not be able to put into words for yourself, or not able to see for yourself immediately, you're using me as a way to get it presented to you in a way that you can understand and actually make a choice. Suddenly it's obvious. Suddenly it's, oh, look at this. Oh, okay, I never thought about that, but it makes sense. But you asked me, even if you didn't ask me. So that's my experience, usually.
Did you have an experience, I forget your name.
Kieran.
Here, thank you so much for sharing, it was just beautiful. I'm curious, did you have an experience like that, like sort of before, like a death experience, before death, after death?
Did you die?
Or however you want to call it?
Yeah, sure, multiple different versions of it. So the death of the idea of me, although that was never really that non-transparent. As long as I can remember, it's always been very transparent. That I'm not really solid, I'm not really, just naturally pretty playful, pretty free, and could take myself lightly. So in that sense, there wasn't an extreme of a difference, I think, as with Kieran. There wasn't that contrast, that build-up of an entire life to the brink of extinction. For me, it was sort of it came more naturally, I think. Well, that came naturally too, obviously. But by natural, I mean it came more...
Gradual.
Yeah, gradual too. It was just sort of already there, but for me it was more of a remembrance. It's almost like the awakening that was already there itself sparked the search for itself. So it was already there, but it just wasn't consciously aware of what it was and how it was and why it was. And so for Kieran's life, it seemed like she wasn't at all sort of actively aware of that. So for her, it was more of a sudden death, and for me, it was more of an exploration or remembrance. But there's many deaths you can experience. Whatever you hold on to, that can die. Whatever you believe in, that will die. In that sense.
Is there forgetting? Is
Forgetting?
Remembering the larger self, is there a forgetting? Do you
There
find
is-
yourself
There's-
forgetting from time to time?
There's recognition and non-recognition, but it's clear. There's nothing in here anymore that wants to seek out recognition, because it doesn't make any sense, because it's here. Even recognition and non-recognition are that. So once you recognize that, usually repeatedly, consistently, for a while, so that it becomes this natural understanding, just like anything else, like any habit. It's as much a habit in that sense. Recognition is as much a habit as anything. Developing your smoking habit or anything. Enlightenment, in a sense, can be a habit.
When you were starting to develop that habit, were there moments when you drift back to the small you, if you will? I mean, now maybe it's automatic, you don't get lost in that, the small you, but was there a time when you were, sometimes you were, not just you, but sometimes you were? And how did you stop having that pendulum swing?
Why would you want to?
Why would you want to stop the pendulum swing?
What are you saying to yourself when you're saying that there is a pendulum swing happening? What are you saying when you are saying that there's a back and forth between the bigger I and the smaller I? What are you basically telling your existence? What are you saying is happening? What are you saying is true? By believing in that process. In other words, actively right now you are believing, you have an idea of the back and forth of the small self and the expansive state. So there's this idea of that. That idea implies a particular assumption that there is that distinction. Does that make sense?
Well, it's more of an experiential. It's
Sure, but everything we believe in becomes the experience. So it's not actually experiential.
it started with a thought.
Yes, like everything. So that's interesting to look at, because then it's no longer, oh, I'm actually going back and forth. No, it is, oh, I've learned to tell myself that I'm going back and forth, because I'm not actually going back and forth. Does that make sense?
Well, there's no back and forth per se. There's no movement at all, really. But there's the perception of. There's sometimes when I get lost in the Peter. My name's Peter. I get lost in the Peterness.
And Peterness.
And then there's other moments when I completely.
So what is
forget
that? What is that being lost in Peterness? When are you lost?
When I'm not lost in everything else. When I'm not. When I don't identify with everything else. And then there's moments when I'm happy and I'm sad. And then there's other moments.
But does happy and sadness mean that you are suddenly Peter? Or are you telling
It's
yourself?
always the same thing. It's never an actual change, but there's a feeling of change.
Sure. So everything changes.
Yeah.
That is, in a sense, that is the changeless.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. But it's not the understanding of that. It's that sometimes I forget that. So sometimes I don't feel that there's a.
Are you forgetting it now?
Probably.
Are you? Check in.
Comes and it goes.
Are you telling your experience that? What is actually here right now? What's hearing my voice? Is there not a natural cognition of my voice? A natural presence of my voice?
Yeah.
Within sort of the, as she called it, the vastness of your existence, or the presence of your existence? Within that presence, there is my voice, right? You could say it like that.
Yeah,
So that presence is here now, right?
sure,
And it is here now, right?
sure,
And it is here now, right?
sure.
And it is here when you ask the question about the smaller self. And it is here when you're lost in Peterness. Can you see that?
Sure, yeah.
So if you shift your allegiance away from these questions, which could only trigger very interesting answers that would create an even stronger distinction between Peter and non-Peter, which really isn't there to begin with. So the question to ask that would be more interesting, or rather more effective at achieving whatever it is that you want for yourself, is to tell yourself a different story. Simply change the story from, oh, I'm going back and forth between Peter and non-Peter, to seeing it in a different light. See it as, for example, one helpful pointer that's often used, one of the basic pointers that actually helps a lot of people, is recognize that the space of Peter is the same space of no Peter, right?
Sure, yeah.
So by simply changing your story, your point of view of your experience of yourself changes. And so the question is not so much what is the truth or how does this work, it is how do you want it to work for you? How would you like this process to unfold for you? What story would you like to tell yourself about what enlightenment means? And if you start with the actual desire, from the place of, okay, what would I desire most? What would be the simplest, the most direct achievement of whatever it is I really desire? If you start from that heart-burning desire, that heart's thirst to be quenched, start from there, and from there develop the story or enter the point of view that is in closest alignment, the understanding that is in closest alignment to giving you that direct experience immediately, as simple, as consistently as possible. So the question is not how did it happen for me, or how did it happen for her, or what is actually going on, or how does it actually work. The question is, what do you want? And from there you build your own story. And not just story like, oh, okay, that will be fun, but sort of like point of view story. What becomes your understanding of yourself? Because the words you give to it, the understanding you give to it, the point of view you're looking from, determines how you experience yourself. So that's why I say, when I think of code, I experience code. When I think of stillness, I experience stillness. When I think of that, and to see that there is that freedom of not having to label it this way per se, but also that way. It can turn into anything. Like she said, it can take any shape, can take any concept, can take any projection. So that gives you the freedom beyond freedom. No longer the freedom of, oh, it has to be space, or it has to be stillness. That can just be one point of view that actually supports you in a deeper experience of yourself. In a more potential, more expanded, more limitless experience of yourself. So the question really is only what do you want? And from there, you build your story without looking at anybody else. How they build their story has no value to you unless you resonate with it, and then you go with that point of view for a while. If the code example works for you, you go with that. And then you see that the code example gives you the experience. Now that you have the code example. Without that story or point of view, you did not have the code experience. It is the story that gives you the experience of yourself. So ultimately you could say there is no one story. There is no one way of enlightenment. Enlightenment sort of is the realization of infinite potential in a sense. That's just another description. So you see, every description is optional. So the question no longer is, how does it really work? But how do you want it to work for you? And then stop going to the teachers that tell it in a way that you absolutely despise, or that you fear, or that you wouldn't want it to be for you. But read the stuff that works for you, that make you feel free and happy and in alignment with that immediate realization for yourself. Does that make sense?
I think so.
So my only point to you is, don't look for the answers, look for the question. There is no answers apart from the question. The question you ask determines the answers, and the answers will determine your experience. So if you're more mindful of what question you're asking yourself, from what desire you're asking that question, then that will determine how immediately and simply you will have a deeper experience of yourself. So you become more your own authority. It's like you become more playful with this enlightenment stuff. It's no longer in anybody else's hands. They don't know, I don't know how it works for you. You see, it works in all the ways that people exist. It works in 7 billion ways, times billions upon billions upon billions, if you include anything else. Infinite ways. Enlightenment knows infinite ways, because every existence is an enlightened existence, whether it's aware of itself as such or not. So every experience, every existence is equally valid. So all you have to do is ask yourself not how does it work, how is it actually working over there. Ask yourself, how do I want it to work over here? And start from that basis. Because then you're in your own authority, and being in your own self-empowered authority is the quickest way to whatever you want to realize. Projecting it outside of yourself as if it's actually a construct that works in a set pattern that you need to understand and go through that set motion actually puts it out there, makes it a struggle, makes it painful, makes you feel separate from it. Well, really, if you embody it right here, what do I want? I am an equal co-creator. I am an equal existence. I am equally God as any other enlightened teacher or being out there. I am my own enlightened being, so what do I want? What makes me passionate? Can be paying the bills, can be being a reflection for other people. Not saying you're not a reflection for other people as well, and I don't care.
No, I think that was a really great kind of expression, like kind of what you had brought up about where do the two of us, like where's the middle places where they meet.
Yeah, I'm listening to that. I hear it's there.
But there's definitely, I feel like that was a really great articulation, because I also experience you like that, and there are differences in our expressions of ourselves, and I feel like part of it, the story I'm telling, part of, I feel like the great gift of the mastery that Ben has is he's able to really, because he does project that for you, is show you where identification is and help unhook it from identification. Because if the recognition for both of us that we are all equal here, there is no hierarchy, and your experience and my experience are only different in the sensation place, not in the truth place, not in the core place. So it's the place we get identified, whether we identify as Peter or we identify as pain or there's a suffering or something. So Ben has a beautiful mastery, because it's really his direct experience a lot is unhooking those identifications. My mastery, or where I teach from, I don't know if it's a mastery, but what I have to offer has a lot to do with that authenticity being embodied. And if you are identified, it's very hard to find the authentic place. So it's almost like we can piggyback each other. Ben can unhook the identity from it, and I can help it embody. And there's a tremendous amount of healing, because as Ben is pointing out to, there's where he's so beautifully talking about changing the identification. And Peter had mentioned it's a thought. It's just a thought. A lot of the time, those thoughts we have, though, are subconscious. So it's not like I can tell myself a different story. Because motherfucker, if I could tell a different story, I would have told a different story. Like if it was in the me, it would have been done. It's that it's subconscious. And from what I can see, from where I'm moving, I can see that it's subconscious. Lots of times the place we're identifying is subconscious wounding. So there's pain at the subconscious level that's telling these repetitive stories where we're hooked. And so we can be unidentified and in the vastness, and suddenly we're identified again, because there's this repetitive story at the subconscious level coming up. So a lot of my work and a lot of my teaching is how to unearth that subconscious, how to heal, bring healing. That is my expertise, is what is real healing, like transformation. And so it's sort of like, so the place where I would venture to say where the two of us live together is along the journey where Ben is so fabulous at showing and mirroring the places of identification and showing the pathway to unhook it. And my place is how does that unhooked authenticity drive a car, pay its bills? Because I think that's another story, is that once you wake up, oof, the entire life is all assembled for you, you know, that it's just an easy walk. But it isn't. It is, particularly here on our planet that is mostly asleep. And a lot of you in this room and a lot of you out there in cyberspace are probably directly experiencing the amounts of consciousness that you have is even a lot more than a lot of your community. And that interface is so challenging. It's like the only sober one at the drunk party. You know, and how are you all driving together? They're all drunk and I'm sober and it's a fucking mess. So how does it embody? How do we embody into our authenticity here? And so that's a lot of what I do. So which comes from just what Ben was talking about, you know, maybe my reason or the way it's pieced together here can bring these pieces to it. The way it's pieced together here brings those pieces to it. But I'm glad you brought it up, because there are a lot of people who read and watch both of our work, and a lot of times we're using opposite language, and it can be confusing to people. And ultimately, you know, the analogy I've been using today or this week, it seems to work until it falls apart. I'm going to keep using it, which is that you know, if all of us went to the beach on Friday night, all of us were there, and we all had to write a poem about that experience. I think actually John Burney was the first person to use this analogy. Anyways, whatever. We all wrote this poem. Not one of us is going to have the same poem. It's going to be totally different, even though we were all at the beach on Friday night. So Ben and I are speaking from the same place, and when he talks, I can absolutely, I'm total agreement with that positioning. Or when I talk, total agreement. So it's finding the place where we live together. It may not live together in you. So you get to find for yourself at different places where identity needs to unhook, or where this really resonates, or when some really subconscious healing needs to carry on, or the awareness of, you know, being trapped in a subconscious pattern that you can't quite root out. Going to wander over to my blog or join in my offerings, you know, and you can move back and forth through all teachers this way. Trusting your own integrity about what's resonating for you.
Good shit.
Good shit.
Can I go?
Sure.
I've had this confusion for like 10 years. I talked to Adia 10 years ago. And
Is it okay if I repeat you?
Yeah, it's quiet. So
Repeat?
for the folks.
Is it okay if I repeat
do
your
you want me
question?
to talk louder?
Oh yeah, that's possible too.
I
Very
can do that,
good.
Sure.
Uh-huh.
So I have this confusion, and it's the words I use are having awareness, like an absolute reality, and then the relative. They are my unique words. They're common words used to describe this awareness, and it's like the relative reality would be the day-to-day life, the job, relationships, and so on. So my awareness expands to absolute reality, and I become detached in a way to the day-to-day life, and that's what's confusing for me. And it's like sometimes on a psychological level it feels like apathy or a withdrawal, and I've even had the feeling that it's like my creative energy gets diminished, and
All right.
my life force.
Direct,
sort of.
it's gonna direct it to who you would like, because both of us are gonna have different takes on that. So,
I don't know, maybe,
do you want Ben to talk about it? Or
Maybe
me?
you first, but
Sure, double whammy.
For
you're
you.
both.
So, two things I'd like to say to that. One is
Thanks.
that's okay that detachment comes up when you're sort of resting in that space. That's okay, because for so long you've been feeling yourself. Maybe already for so long you've been resting too, I don't know. But it's quite natural that as you shift sort of your perception to a more absolute sense of being or existing, that it takes away the focus from what we would call daily life, right? So there's a sense of detachment. That's not a bad thing. That's almost like recharging. When you're recharging your phone, it's okay. It's just recharging there. You're not using it as much. But we often hear, this is the second thing, we often hear that there's only two possibilities, either the absolute or the relative. The relative being only one possibility, that which we've known for 30, 40 years.
Right.
But that's not the only possibility.
It's exactly what you were speaking to him about.
Yeah, so the suggestion would be, because you also brought in the idea of your creativity being diminished. So the idea is that you sort of, from the vantage point of knowing yourself at a deeper level, at a deeper place, at a more untouchable, more timeless space, from that you actually have sort of this freedom, because you're not perceiving daily life for a moment. It's just more of a self-awareness. From that space, in a sense you could say, where there's no code yet that appears to you consciously, sure, the code, you could say the code is already out there, you can return to it anytime you like, but from the space of self-awareness, the code doesn't really appear to you, right? You're not aware of your friends, you're not aware of your mom, you're not aware of the problems, you're not aware of your bills when you're self-aware, correct? Just
Yeah. Well.
Okay, so
And see, in my.
wait 1 second.
Oh, that's-
What's the question? When you're self-aware like that, what you would call the absolute, you're not aware of anything else for a moment, right? It sort of diminishes to the background, right?
No, I am aware of, like, I become aware of, like, the magnificence of the planet and existence and the universe.
That is the relative, but that's the relative renewed. That is coming back from a deeper understanding. You see it in a brighter light. But that is the coming back to the relative. So the relative
So you
is
call
not,
that the relative.
the relative is not so much having to pay my bills or having to do it the way it's always been done. The freedom of stepping back from the relative for a moment, from that detachment, the benefit of that is that you gain greater freedom to play around, to bring something new, bring in different frequency, different vibration of your existence into life. So we usually naturally collapse into the known, what we already know, the relative as we are used to it. But if we sort of just rest and from that space again ask ourselves, how would our ideal reality more look like? What would I do if I'd be of a different nature, of a more enlightened nature? What if the world wasn't as dull as it is? What if it would be creative? So you sort of, from the absolute, you bring, from that spaciousness, you bring your renewed creativity, your renewed passion to life, not adjusting to relative reality as it was, but bringing with you a new reality altogether. So that's how evolution is accelerated, through you, through you, through you, through you, through you. So you rest, you know yourself as on a deeper level, you become less and less afraid, in a sense, of the small-minded stuff, less and less involved with the way things are, and that gives you, whoop, a broader perspective. But in a sense, you can never escape the relative. The relative can just become a more aligned reflection of the divine. So just with this knowledge, you can just, okay, I don't have to feel like, oh, I'm returning to the relative as it was. No, what do I want the relative to be? And take that frequency with you, that renewed creativity. How would I shape reality? And then stay in your heart frequency and don't assume the form that's already there. Bring with you a new form, a new courage, a new confidence, a new intelligence. So that's the place where your creativity is renewed and the passion again has an avenue. It doesn't have an avenue if you block it down with the thought that says, oh, relative reality. So you ask yourself, what do I want relative reality to look like? And then you bring that to the table. Does that make sense?
It's nice.
Or nice is good.
Yeah. Yeah, I struggle often with, my life hasn't changed. I work in this really challenging job, and that I just find it, like, I'll just get lost. I'll just, like, not want to work at all, and find that challenging. But I like the,
If you don't want to work, then don't work. That has to be the first
I
step.
find that frightening. Like,
Sure, yeah. And that's where you can read her blog. The stuff that comes up.
Pardon? What did you
I
say?
said, when that stuff sort of comes up, you can read her blog.
Read her blog.
The subconscious stuff that comes up, the fear for that new reality, for the new experiences. But obviously you don't want to go to work. You say you've been working there for so long in this challenging job, so it doesn't resonate with you. So obviously the relative inspires apathy for you, because it's not very inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
So really, more and more, be your own creator and less a slave to what's already created. So more and more the question is, what do I want to bring to the table? How would I frequentially or vibrationally give meaning to my life or give shape to my life? So you say that heart frequency that emanates instead of that sort of slave identity that receives. It's always on the receiving end of the universe. But the more you embody that confidence within your heart and ask yourself, what do I desire? The more you will be giving life instructions in an energetic way, not like, oh, okay, I want this to happen now, but in a attitude way, so to speak. And then it changes your life, and then you will find the courage more and more to quit your job, to do something else, something that resonates for you.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, quit your job for sure.
Quit your job. Leslie's the next one. Quit your job for sure.
Yeah, I was noticing about, for a long time it felt like there wasn't a safe space to be truly authentic. And there wasn't this ability to really get into this cellular level to heal stuff. And I was noticing as I started stepping into greater authenticity, thanks to a lot of the feminine wisdom, and I'm seeing a real nice spiral now in between the feminine and masculine, between the yin and yang, or whatever you want to call it. The more you're authentic, the greater automatic healing takes place, and the greater automatic healing takes place there, the more you're able to be authentic. That kind of spiral is very beautiful. Anyway, thanks, because that's critical here.
Thanks for quitting your job.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great feeling. I don't for the life of me know I'm not scared shitless, but I'm not about that. But it's really nice to finally say, this totally doesn't fit,
But to stand in your own authenticity first, to get there, to embody, to do that healing work, and to get there, to find that naturally emanating from you.
To feel the trust that something will be,
As opposed to somebody externally saying, quit your job, it's a movement in you.
Yeah, well, and that was
it might
there
be
too.
Keep your job.
That there was support in that, but ultimately it has to be, you have to feel that inside in order to actually do it.
Hopefully.
Carry it out.
Hopefully, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's the point. And I think people do things without feeling it inside. And unless, so much of mine is like where I begin is where you're going to end. Like, there's no journey here. What I'm talking about is the end place, And so moving outside of your authenticity is, in my language, is pain bodies in action. So embodying yourself and embodying your own true wisdom is where right action is found. And the particular nuances of all of that right action can only emanate from your own integrity. And I think we're all conditioned to give that up. I mean, the majority conditioning on this planet is to take it from other sources. And we give it up in a second. We're trained to do it. As children, we're trained to give it up and take it externally. So, yeah. Yeah. Did you just want to say thank you, or do you have a question?
No, that was it. Thanks.
Oh, great.
I have one more thing. I sat with audio for a long time, and I sort of had this belief that if I let go of ego, it didn't matter if I just stayed in some. It didn't matter what I did. That's sort of why.
It does. You should do whatever resonates. Whatever you desire to do is what you should be doing.
Yeah.
Because desire, like heartfelt desire, not the desire that's sort of like based in these safety mechanisms of, oh, I need to protect this and this, so I want this to be this way. Not the control desire, but those heartfelt desires. When we contact them again, because some of us can't even contact them initially, because we've been giving our power away so much to the actual reality out there, which doesn't even exist. So to re-embody that authenticity, and to actually ask yourself, just start asking yourself, what is genuinely part of my heart? What is my genuine blueprint for being here? What's my genuine desire? And that is actually life's desire. It's not your desire.
Right, exactly.
So you're denying God its creation by saying that you're not worthy of that desire. You're saying God is not worthy of manifestation. So by really tapping into that real desire, you're actually hearing God's voice telling you what to do.
I think that's what tripped me up a lot, because I started believing desire was not a good thing, and I should let go of it. I
That
think
was a
that
really
messed me up.
predominant. Yeah, I think that was a really predominant
Old
teaching.
teaching of
Yeah, I think it
well,
messed
that's
a lot
why
of
I
people
stayed in
up.
that job
But
for
it's
so
like,
long.
Mm.
but you're talking about personal desire or life's
But there's
desire,
spirit
life's
moving
calling.
through
When there's
us.
no identification, it's the same thing.
Personal desire is still divine desire, but you can make a distinction between desire and control. So whenever you want to control, that's not necessarily desire, that's just fear. But whatever speaks to you, like with a voice of, instead of a voice of, ooh, if I don't do that, then. So it's not so much the desires we're speaking of in terms of personal desires. The control ones are really just, oh, I don't want something else to happen, therefore I must do this. But it's still an I must in order to not be hurt, or in order to not be me. So the other desire has a much different flavor. It's connecting you to all that is. It's giving you a sense of belonging, a sense of, yes, I'm on my path, a sense of confirmation and empowerment. Those are God's desires. Those are life's desires. Even if they're personal, life is personal. God is personal. It's the only way it can be.
And what I hear you saying, let me try and say what I hear you saying, is in saying to change your story or to change your questions and what you're wanting. My interpretation of that is that the vastness, life, whatever, is going to take this unique form to the extent that it's what invited in, open to something. And the story that we're telling ourselves limits it or makes it more open to embody. So that I'm just trying to do this. I'm not sure how well I'm doing it. But like the
Do you want to try to do this? Or do you think you should be understanding what I say?
no.
What do you want in this moment?
I'm feeling like you're both saying that vastness is embodying you uniquely.
Yeah.
And you're saying it in your own ways. And I'm hearing that, I love it, and I've been thinking the same thing. So it's like, I'm just trying to put words to it.
Mm-hmm.
So because what I hear you saying then is, if we come from both of you, if we come from a really authentic place, then our story is coming from whatever, a clear desiring or a clear urging or something. And it's not coming from shoulds or fear or limitation.
Yeah, and those shoulds and those supposed tos there can be the deep subconscious conditioning
Right.
that's shaped that for
in
you.
The way. It's in the way. So.
And you're still gonna, just as Ben's saying, experientially, you're still gonna, it's still gonna have when it, even though it's subconscious, as you go to move from that conditioning, it's gonna have the same sensations to you. So the ones that have an authenticity to them, you know, Ben's like amazing. English is his second language, and he's a freaking master at nuances with it. But I'm just going to add some language because it's my first language. It's going to have a real sensual feeling of delicious, of like there's nothing I would rather, like that what we sometimes call effortlessness, even though it might be efforting to do it. It's like, oh God, I would really love to blank. It has a yummy feeling to it. What Ben was saying is like there's a hum to it, a resonance, a yes. And the ones that are even though it's a subconscious conditioning, when it starts to move, it's going to feel there's going to have shoulds attached to it. It's going to feel tight. It's going to feel tense. It's going to feel like effort, and it's not sustainable. So even if you are a fierce, willful human like I am, it's unstable. That conditioning falls apart, as you may notice in your own lives. It falls apart a lot because it doesn't serve. It's not yummy. So in the lived experience of it, it's still exactly what Ben's talking about. It has those different flavorful nuances, and where both of us are talking about the orientation towards the ones that are yummy and delicious. And both of us have a lot of direct experience of the kind of fear that will rise up when you try to move fully from just what's delicious, to pull you back into the deep subconscious conditioning and identity. And then you get to work with fear, which is pretty great too.
And Ben showed us with his body the two ways.
Did you?
When the desire was.
Did you just mime it?
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's good.
It's another thing, because usually, like we were talking about the old teachings, where desire is equated to control, and so everything is called, okay, you should just deprive yourself of anything that desires. Why that way doesn't actually work effectively, quickly, and in a joyful way is because you're focusing on controlling more control. And the quickest way to actually resolving what those ancient teachings talk about is to follow your joy, because when you follow your joy, when you listen to that heart frequency, that which inspires you, then that will show you those fears much clearer than if you would try to dismantle the fears and not do anything. So it's actually by allowing yourself to be more and more joyous that you're actually respecting those teachings in a way that, I'm not sure if they were meant in that way, but ideally they would have been meant in that way. Does that make sense? So much quicker, you don't have to worry about ego and stuff like that, because you only have an ego because you're not following your heart. So follow your heart, your ego diminishes immediately because control diminishes, because you find that joy and empowerment within. Like Leslie said, once she sort of started to get that confidence, it also looked different. Suddenly it became an option to quit her job. Before, for years, it wasn't even an option because she was focused on the control part more than, I'm not speaking for you, but just using her as a possible example. To have that more confidence, that coming from a place of authenticity, even connecting to it, even asking yourself what is authentic to me, already connects you to that heart frequency. It is vibration, all is vibration. So to be in that vibration shows you the vibrations that don't work for you. When if you're focused on the things that don't work for you, you don't actually see what doesn't work for you, because you are what doesn't work for you. You have to rise above what doesn't work for you so that you can see what doesn't work for you, and it can come up in the light of your heart frequency, in the light of your authenticity, and then it has no ground to stand on. Sure, sometimes it will cut you back a little bit. It will go like this, up, up, one step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Usually that's how it happens, but that's the process, and that's perfect. But you won't actually take those 2 steps if you're not enjoying yourself. So you have to ask yourself, what am I? Who am I? Who am I want to be? What resonates for me? Follow that resonance. It will show you the dark parts, but with light. If you look for the dark parts and try to control yourself so that one day you'll be enlightened because you don't desire anything anymore, you're not actually dealing with that stuff, you're becoming that stuff.
Yeah.
You're not resolving it, you're becoming it. You're becoming the image of enlightenment, but really you're just very, very depressed. On the scale of the universe, you're like,
Yeah.
you're like static.
You're playing a game.
Yes. You're denying God within, and you're calling it spiritual. So follow your joy, and it will show you the dark parts, but within the frequency of light, so that you can actually deal with it in a way that works, not in a way that, if you are low frequency, you cannot deal with low frequency stuff because you are it. You have to be the light. You have to enjoy yourself. Follow that heart wave. From that light, the dark stuff becomes more and more easy peasy.
It's a courageous movement. It's courageous to follow your joy. Like, it takes a tremendous amount of willingness or suffering
Tiredness,
from
yeah.
from fatigue, exhaustion. So we're not saying, it's not being said lightly, like, we know the cost, but it's essential. It's really essential. That's where your fulfillment lives. That's what you're here for. It's the thing. I come from a town that is so small and so cold at the very top of the world that all the people, many of the people in my town are profoundly authentic because they could not survive unless everyone was doing what was totally true. So I have this unique experience of knowing what society and community looks like when people are embodied in their society, because if someone pretended things or should things, that community would fall apart, because we really need the person with the amazing chainsaw skills, We need them to do that and not be a bank teller, And we need the person with incredible financial thoughts to be the bank teller, because there's only a few of us. So there's only going to be one bank teller. So let's let it be the guy who's a genius at math, not the guy who is daydreaming about fiddling with his chainsaw, because that guy needs to be bucking up cords of wood for the whole community, and vice versa. We don't need people to pretend to be vegetarians if they're craving some moose meat, and that's what they want, because they're not going to make it through the winter unless they do it. So, but as we come south, the populations get bigger and it gets warmer. Maybe we lose some of that authenticity. And I know the level of courage. I know it in my own life. I cannot embody anything other than authenticity, and it's still not easy. It's like, I'm very sure this report is due in an hour and a half, and the deep yes wants me to take a nap. And I have to follow the deep yes, even though I haven't even started this report, and this report's going to take me 10 hours to do, and it's due at 3 o'clock. But I have to follow the thing, and I sleep for 4 hours. And when I wake up, the deadline's passed, but I look at the email and it says, Jerry, head of HR, wasn't available today. Can you send the report on Monday? And can the report not have everything we talked about, but rather this, which we in fact outlined already in the other email? Can you just change the fonts? So, but I can't predetermine how it's moving. I can just follow my DPS. And that seems like maybe a low stake one, because I know it gets higher stake when it's like, my kid is at the playground and it doesn't seem safe, and I have to pick them up, and the DPS says swing by the bank. I get it, or however the stakes line up in your life. Like, I have to pay a mortgage and I cannot get to work. My DPS is to quit my job. Like, it can line up really intensely. But so we don't say it without boldness in our dare.
On many levels, I've come to know that I trust that yes, and I've come to learn that it's not my desire, it's like whatever the word, I don't like the word God, but spirit moving through me.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, so.
Mm-hmm. And if she wouldn't have taken the nap, I dare to say the email would not have come and the deadline would have remained the same.
Mm-hmm.
And same even with the kid on the playground.
The effort would have been, it would have been so effortful for me to write the report. It would have been so effortful for Jerry at HR to be there for 3 to read it. It would have been so effortful for the board of directors to approve it. The effort would have just gone right across all of us. As you know, in your life, you felt that. You felt that level of effort up against a false structure. It would have resonated everywhere.
Can I tell a really quick story? One day I was running in the redwood forest, like long distance for like an hour, and my phone went off and I was like really irritated. I turned it off. And then I was running along and right a second in front of me, a 50-foot tree fell. And if that phone hadn't gone off, it would have killed me probably. So I'm like, when that happened, I was just like, I'm not going to question anything.
Yes, there you go.
It's like everything
Trust
has
that
a
frequency.
everything has a reason, and we may not.
When the
know.
authenticity shines forth, trust it. Because the code rearranges itself to your frequency. So that's why she got the email. She didn't get the email because that was already set in stage. Oh, it would be rescheduled. It was only rescheduled because life is only a mirror of her frequency. So follow that which excites you, and it will lead you to an exciting life in the reflection as well.
That was truly a wake-up call.
It was. That's and I recognized it as such.
What's our time? Yeah.
It's 9:49.
Okay.
It's actually almost.
Okay. Maybe we'll take one last question. Is anyone burning with something? Because we'll answer your question.
So many things.
Yeah, we'll totally answer your question. Totally. I just want to check in with anybody else who might be just like burning with anything, right, that we can pierce. Okay.
Yeah, actually.
Can you talk a little louder though?
I will do my best.
Or can we repeat it?
Louder.
Are you okay if we repeat it?
Yeah, totally.
Then you just be where you are.
I hate that word. Sorry. I just don't know what it means anymore. That's the only reason. I'm trying to get to a place also where I could say I hate something and it's okay. Oh my gosh. So.
She's trying to get to a place where she can hate something and it's really okay.
Because I don't actually. Okay, so I'm totally digging the whole joy thing because it feels really great. And when I hear that said, that frequency then can become sort of pleasure, then you can sort of.
So she says she's enjoying the joy thing, and what did you say?
I think something was said about from joy, then you can sort of kind of see what kind of works and what doesn't.
From joy you can see what works and what doesn't.
Right. So this is cool.
This is cool.
I think we can sum it up for her. Let her speak and then we'll sum it up.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, it's good, it's helpful.
It's like the Occupy movement, when they repeat what somebody's saying in front of the group.
It might be uncomfortable for her.
Mic check.
So that place, right, where like you notice something. Sometimes it's a story because I'll like repeat, I'll listen to myself. Sometimes I get lost in it. But sometimes I listen to it and I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, how am I even thinking this is true? Especially from before, where like technically anything that you think really doesn't have any ground. It doesn't really mean anything. But I have times where I kind of like sink into, okay, I totally have to I'm totally being checkmated and like completely being forced to completely accept this amazing bliss that is everything that exists. So this anxiety arises, but it feels more like, I guess it's like a combination of just like sadness anger turning into sadness from resisting so much, and then just kind of, I start shaking and it just gets really scary. But I think I wanted to keep an open mind, because then when I, hear like, okay, so then but there should be joy to kind of navigate that. It's confusing because it's not necessarily that I'm practicing like affirmations for being grateful or for finding what my bliss is, because honestly that really doesn't, like, I don't know, and I don't know if it's because I've lived in darkness for so long, or just apathy or whatever, or
I'm
because
just gonna catch these guys up. So in her thought process, thoughts will come in and they don't really mean anything, but when they arrive for her and she's engaging with them, sometimes it's really challenging to look for joy in it, or look for where the joy is.
yeah, so I'm at whatever process is happening is at a place where it's attributing it to some kind of existential thing, where like I feel like joy is a way of trying, because in this space it doesn't sound right. I don't know, I feel like it's something that you need to do, but eventually if you completely let go, then you shouldn't have to do anything. Doesn't it arise on its own?
No. Ben, really different story. Do you want to direct that to one of us?
Whichever one of you would like to is burning to answer it.
I'll answer it. So she's talking about, there's actually a resistance to like something like positive affirmations or gratefulness or the kind of things where you're focused on joy. Like there's an internal resistance is what it sounds like you're saying. And it is a little uncomfortable because she's looking for more authentic, but she hates the word authenticity.
Oh, because there's like some weird non-association between joy and authenticity. Like it's not authentic.
So that artifice, I think she's pointing to, tell me if this is what it feels like, because this is the words I would use, pointing to that place where there's like this whole kind of new age or religious movement about like law of attraction and positive affirmations and gratefulness practices, and the place, and that feels hollow or superficial, and it doesn't feel comfortable when
Artificial.
and it feels artificial for where you're at in terms of going to a place of letting go or deep surrender and letting anything arise regardless of its quality. Does that sound?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about that. That's great. So, and ultimately the last place you got to is in that deep place of deep surrender. Isn't it automatic? Whatever is going to arise is going to be that joy. You're going to know the yes from that deep place of surrender. And that's where she kind of ended, and I was automatically being like, no. But, which I actually don't mean to say that so clearly. But first off, I completely understand how there can be felt like there's a superficiality to kind of affirmations, or maybe the practice of law of attraction or something like that. Mm-hmm. If it's received at a certain level, absolutely, because it's really just rewiring the conscious plane. So the conscious level, it's saying, it's like if your thought goes like this, just flip it around to something more positive, and that's not jiving with you.
Dude, something is totally trying like not to listen to you right now, so I'm kind of needing that like, no, listen to this. What is this?
Doesn't want to get seen. Awesome. Okay, follow that. Follow the authenticity of that, which is that there's resistance here. Resistance is completely welcome. In my house, anyway, fully welcome. Because if you fight resistance, you will lose. So it's like, welcome to that resistance. And I think it's a really...
And again, like the example of the email is so valid. She didn't go about it, it would be great if he can send me an email that it will be rescheduled. No, she just followed the authentic wave. That's all she needed to do. And so she didn't need to create with affirmations. That would be coming from the control place. I'm afraid that if I don't first change the circumstances, then I can take a nap. No, she took a nap. And the circumstances said, here you go. Mm-hmm. So the joy is really just, authenticity comes with a sense of joy. It comes with a sense, no matter how small. Maybe you're not that aware of it, but whatever feels authentic, even if it's, I don't want to listen to this, that may not seem joyful, but if you listen to yourself, that's actually very liberating because it is authentic. So even the authenticity of no or something that doesn't seem like joy, that authenticity is joyful in a way. So it's not about creating more joy, it is about following the authenticity and letting the joy sort of follow you naturally.
I project your word for authenticity. It's not lining up for you, but what we're using as authenticity might for you mean like a surrendered place, like a real deep wisdom place.
Yeah.
So I suspect what we're calling authenticity, you're calling deep wisdom or deep surrender or deep letting go.
Yeah.
And so we're saying authenticity brings this quality of deliciousness to it. And I suspect for you, yes, what you're referring to is that surrendered place where the deep wisdom brings with it its own intelligence that you can hear.
Right, lately I like associate with crucifixion. I don't know if I don't know, there's like that pain part, like it's gonna be painful. It has to be some kind, you have to suffer. You know, like to become enlightened, you have to go, it's not about joy. These are things that, these are like candy bars, like you have to get real and feel your feelings. And I think I'm just being really hard on myself.
If that's what enlightenment is, do you want it?
Ooh.
Because you don't have to have enlightenment, because it's not something out there that's actually set in stone for you to find. So there's no enlightenment out there. You decide what it is for you. Enlightenment is to be the embodiment of whatever you want to be. If that is a deep wisdom, surrender, spaciousness, then you can call that enlightenment to the outside world, but it's just your own desire being fulfilled within yourself. So what do you want? Again, the question is not how to get enlightened, but what do I want right now? And follow that authenticity. And it will lead you to the deepest wisdom possible in the quickest possible way with the least amount of effort in the most enjoyable fashion.
And it's not ego just trying.
No, it's not ego just trying. It's ego projecting enlightenment to be something actually statically out there that you need to reach. That's ego. That creates lack. Whatever you impose upon yourself that creates a sense of I have to, I ought to, creates a sense of lack that's completely alien to the universe in its natural state. Nothing else has that. Only human society has it. So when you impose that upon yourself, I have to, I should, I must reach enlightenment, you're creating an ego that then you're trying to battle. So you're sustaining the teachings are sustaining the ego, because they're all based on a sense of inadequacy, a sense of lack that isn't there if you follow your authenticity. So it's way quicker to follow your authenticity if you want to end your ego. It's immediate. Then if you work your way through your ego. Be authentic, moment by moment. Let that be the only practice. And that will lead you to whatever teachings resonate for you, whatever pointers resonate for you, without taking them as the final law, but just as possible points of view that resonate for you only right here, right now. And then they don't. And then the next one works. Does that make sense? So keep dancing. Don't subject yourself to any teaching out there as being the law, because it's not there. Human beings cannot make up the law. Whatever works for somebody does not have to work for you. You are an equal part of existence as anybody else. So listen to your own. Don't deny divinity within yourself. Don't deny that deep wisdom place within yourself. Follow only that. Let go of all teachings. If that authenticity leads you to a teaching, fine. But you don't even have to learn anything. If that's not coming to you when you're following what really resonates for you. You will be shown everything. You will be given everything you need. Not anything more complicated, not anything less. Exactly what you need and to the amount you need it and when you need it, if you stay true to yourself. That's why this is way more practical and powerful than sitting down and trying to control the ego or get rid of something. Be authentic and there is no ego. Then fear comes up, and so there is what we call the ego effect. Then, you remember your authenticity and ego disappears. So it's a moment by moment disappearance of ego by simply listening to who you are within. What plays your chords? What resonates? What struck your chords? How do you think?
That was it. Strike your chords. Play your chords. Peter.
Yeah.
I love how Peter's like so right.
And then I'm like, why am I doing that? So,
It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. I love it.
I think my question actually was another version of your question, at least to my ears. My question is, why does it matter whether you write the report or not? Why does it matter whether you're going towards bliss or towards non-bliss?
Yeah, I hear in that question almost an echo to the first question that you asked me.
It's all the same question.
Yeah, and so coming from my point of view, I'd say, this is a little existential, theoretical little catch for you that's distracting you potentially from landing where it is. Because the answer is there is no answer. There is no why. There isn't a why about it. There is simply passion. In my language, there's simply passion and love. So why have a room? Why have chairs? Why have people here? It's kind of an orchestration of love, and it's doing it itself.
Well, it just seems like it sounds like there's a lot of movement away from non-joy, for instance, and that, to my ears, seems like a differentiation. If we're talking about oneness, non-joy is the same thing as joy. So I don't understand why we would move towards joy and away from non-joy.
In the
because
embodiment.
It might sound in a lower truth, higher truth sort of way, as if moving towards joy is better than moving towards non-joy. But at the end, to my ears, to my
You're right,
authentic self, I don't understand.
God is
why
welcome
non-joy
to take
is
any
worse.
shape, absolutely.
Yeah.
And in the ultimate place, it is only one shape, and it's a vast shape. But it does come into form. And it can come into any form it wants, but some forms are way more comfortable and way more closer to its source than a kind of contort. So for instance, effortlessness at a quantum place moves an incredibly efficient rhythm. So just scientifically, there's an efficient movement to the energy. When pain enters that field, pain is a contorted energy movement, and it takes more effort to do it.
Why do
And
we
in
care
nature,
about
things that are
effort?
effortful,
Yeah.
like effortlessness wins the day. Everything moves towards effortlessness.
Occam's razor, simplest path is the path.
Is
of
what
least
happens. So
resistance.
what we're talking about is the conditioning of
Why
your
does
life
it-
in pain.
Occam's razor, though, which is another way of saying what I think the contorted and uncontorted, that's very much a physical thing. That's very much
What resonates for you? What do you want? It's very simple.
I'm trying
If
to-
you want the oneness perspective, you have
I'm
it.
curious about if there's another perspective. And I wanna
There's
hear the
infinite
other.
perspectives. That's
Well,
why the
I wanna hear-
question.
I throw that out there not because I necessarily need an answer, but I'm just curious what your answers are.
I have an answer.
Please.
There's no why. It's just that's the way life wants to move. That's all.
A more effortless rhythm.
Life just wants to move that way. There isn't. It feels to me like it's a question, which I understand it because I've had some. But it feels to me like it's a conceptual question you're asking. It's just that on a bodily, physical level, as a human, in all forms, they just want to flow.
Well, I think the question is the Occam's razor, simplest or contorted form, is just that.
Guys, we can take this outside the room.
And in fact, we're coming really close to the end. I think that we are taking
That's a
more
really
time.
good question.
Yes, I
Yeah.
still want to get Mark's couple of songs. So if it's quick, yes.
Yeah.
Otherwise, feel free to email us, and we're available.
Feel free to email her.
Feel free to email me.
I have a lot of emails.
You've got a lot of emails to look through, exactly. You can find all of my stuff at Mystic Girl in the City. Just put Mystic Girl in the City in your Google search bar, and all my YouTube, my Facebook, my blog will come up. I'm doing a day-long retreat on October 13th at a beautiful farm in Los Altos, and there's pamphlets at the door if anybody wants information about that, or it's on my blog. And I actually have weekly sessions where we do call sessions. I've kind of got people all over the world that call in, just kind of weekly support or weekly question stuff. So that's available. You can just drop in once, or you can continue with us weekly. So there's a lot of, my stuff is out there, and you can easily find it at Mystic Girl in the City. Ben's stuff is all at freeawareness.com. You can find all his offerings, which are many. And Mark, we were joking about this earlier, Mark actually has a website, but you really just have to call him. The phone number's out there if you want to know what he's doing. Let's do a
Or
couple
email
songs,
me.
and maybe afterwards we can just have a little quick conversation. So sing us out, Mark.